Kittitas County is made up of small cities, small towns. It's a very rural place. It's the kind of place where the canyons and the rivers and the mountaintops are named after Native American words or phrases or early settlers or old family names, and a lot of them are hard to pronounce. In fact, that's oftentimes how you can tell who the locals are, by who can actually pronounce the words correctly. It's a region with a lot of different landscapes. It's so diverse that you can hike or ski in alpine mountainscapes in the morning and bike in desert landscapes in the afternoon. It's sunny most days, and that's really what I like most about it. It's not the kind of place that you think of when you think of flooding. I moved here in 1994, and I really fell hard for the place, for the diversity, for the landscape, for the people, and for the culture. My wife and I got married, and we decided to stay and raise our family here. In 2008, I was first elected as a county commissioner, and when I started, I knew that water was important to the region, especially because it was so dry here. But I can tell you today that I didn't nearly know enough. In the fall of 2008, the weather was really shaping up nicely for us. It was snowing a lot early in the fall, and that kind of turned into winter, and we looked like we were going to have a good water supply for the following year. Then in January of that year, the weather changed pretty dramatically. Snowpack that had been developing over the last several months really kind of channeled the rain, and roads that had been plowed clear of the snow turned into raging torrents. We had rivers, essentially where roads used to be, and as a brand new county commissioner, I was suddenly faced with the task of declaring a state of emergency. We had residents who were being evacuated and needed places to stay. Entire neighborhoods were underwater. We had roads that were cut off by landslides. It was a pretty major disaster right out of the gate. I spent the next few days during that period of time, and many sleepless nights in the following weeks, really responding to the emergency, and then trying to figure out what had happened and why it had happened. So then a conversation started in our community. People wanted to know why it happened. They wanted to know what happened, and they wanted to know what they could do about it. We knew that more people were living in the county than ever before. We knew that development was occurring at a pretty rapid pace. We knew that there were levee systems that had been built nearly 100 years before that weren't maintained properly, and were causing problems where they were channelizing the river, increasing the rate of flow, and disconnecting floodplains from their historic uses. So it was clear to me as a local leader that a real sense of urgency was building to protect people, to protect the environment, to protect habitat. So then a conversation started. Flooding had happened here in the past, but not nearly at this level. This was a lot more devastating, and people wanted to know why. I wanted to know why, and we all, I think, just wanted to know what we could do about it. We had more people living in the county than ever before. They were living in places they hadn't lived before. We were seeing warmer, wetter weather patterns. These were being predicted as a permanent change. That was something we knew we were going to have to deal with. Development was occurring at a rapid pace. We had levee systems that were built all along the river corridor almost a century before that in many cases they were making the problem worse. They were increasing velocities, they were disconnecting floodplains, and they weren't being maintained properly. So as an elected official, it was really clear to me that a sense of urgency had been building to protect people, to protect the environment, and to protect homes in the county. At the same time, another effort was really starting to take shape in the Yakima Basin, and that's the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan. As a county commissioner, I became really involved in that plan. I saw a lot of value there for the long-term health and benefit for our community, both economically and environmentally. And I was able to work in that process to build relationships. I think that we had never had really within our community with stakeholders all up and down the basin, as well as in local, state, and federal government. I really saw something unique going on there. I saw people who weren't talking before starting to talk. I saw groups that in many cases actively opposed each other's efforts before working together in a collaborative way. And We knew we needed that exact same thing here locally to address the flooding issues that we had in our community. So we formed a citizens group, we formed a technical group, and they started talking as well. Many of the same players actually that were involved in the integrated plan. For the first time, we were talking about solutions, and we started discussing a county government department that would actually focus on flooding prevention and flooding solutions in a more holistic way. And then we took that conversation to the community. We had a lot of open houses. We had a lot of community conversations. We had public hearings. And finally, we sent a ballot vote out in 2012 that was approved to create the very first ever flood control zone district in Kittitas County that was funded with a new property tax assessment. So from there, we began studying areas of the county where flooding problems exist. We worked with local landowners, we worked with stakeholders, we worked with agency representatives, and we started developing plans and strategies really, that were good for people, good for fish, and good for the environment. We still have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of things that happened in the past that need to be fixed. We have a lot of plans for the future, but I think most importantly, we've learned that if we can work together, we can do it in a way so that everybody wins. And as a county commissioner, I've taken that lesson that I learned very early on, and applied it throughout my entire career.